It's the start of something big today.
You suck. This guy sucks.
So Rob is trying to get the dog. Yeah, these are the duties, Rob.
Yeah, I know.
See, I know what's going over there. You are not coming under your net to stop it.
My sophomore year, we lost to the Schmet of all frickin' teams.
And then the following year was an absolute season from hell.
We can't keep playing then. No. I think we...
Welcome back to Puck Watching, another off-season episode. New topic today, since the world of hockey is right now not full of much news. So we're going to come at it from another angle, another topic. This time we're going to evaluate a decade of debatable mistakes made by the St. Louis Blues organization, particularly Doug Armstrong and upper management. We can't just say it was all because of him, but ultimately it was his final say for a lot of these different mistakes that we've had. So what we're going to do is, Nick, we're going to do a top 5. We have 10 different mistakes that we're going off of, and I'll say them real quick. And then you're going to say, based on the top 10, ranking as the 5 worst. And we didn't prepare for this. We're just deciding on the fly. So we're going to go with it. But we do have the top 10 mistakes. So, Nick, here you go. Your options, my options. We'll get into it. First one's an easy one. Letting Alex Pietrangelo walk in 2020. Not to say that's number 1, but that's the first one here. Torrey Krug, the contract. Vince Dunn. Mike Hoffman. The Marco Scandella extension, trading Tage Thompson, the Tarasenko divorce, the Nick Leddy trade and extension, letting David Perron go, and then Bolduc for Mayu at this point. Lots of different options here, Nick. And also, if you want to add one that we don't have there, feel free. But I think we've covered them. Over the course of the decade. So let's just start off with number 5 of your worst mistakes, and then I'll give mine, then we'll debate.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I feel like it should be noted, despite such a great outcome of what happened the following year. But I think Tage Thompson, just given what's been happening with the Sabres and how effective he's been and how bad the Blues have been and how desperate they need a scorer like Tage Thompson, that would probably clock in for me at number 5. And I don't think it's the number 1 mistake at all. I do think it's middle enough of the road to where it has certainly become a larger thing to talk about as time has gone on, despite the Cup, because the Cup keeps getting further and Tage Thompson keeps on producing and producing and producing.
Yeah. And finally, Buffalo is actually making the playoffs too.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one. And it's probably best to have it at 5. But I'm not going to go with the same list as yours. So I'm going to think about this here. So I'm going to say at this point that it wasn't that big of a deal in the moment. But it was just one of those things that he was just never a good player for the St. Louis Blues, was this Marco Scandella extension. This was so bad. And I had to remind myself of what he was getting paid for a second. But I want to say it was like $4 million that he was getting paid as a horrible bottom pair defenseman. Like really, really bad. But I'll go after. I mean, I don't know if I have much debate on yours with Thompson. I just think that the easy counter argument is for all the time that it's just like, if you didn't have O'Reilly that year, you don't have a Stanley Cup in 2019, and you're looking at 6 years or 7 years later that, Blues still don't have a Stanley Cup, and it's been nearly 60 years, right? So Tage Thompson wasn't at a level like that yet. But then you think, well, if Tage Thompson was still here, O'Reilly didn't have that time, is this organization in a way different spot as it relates to the core that we have of players? Like, imagine having Robert Thomas, Jordan Kyrou, Tage Thompson all on the same team. That's kind of freaky to think about. So I look at it from that angle, but I also look at, man, you just can't take back what you did in 2019. You have to realize that O'Reilly just was the player that year. And obviously it was a Conn Smythe winner, but people forget what he did in the regular season. He was awesome. It just contributed in all facets. And him, David Perron on that same line for that second line was just madness at times. Such a good duo. That you wouldn't have gotten from Tage Thompson at least initially. So that's my thought process with it. But I don't really mind your pick.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you want me to go for 4? Or do you want to go for 4 so you can get the first?
I don't know. So are you with Scandella?
Would I switch out my pick?
No, I'm just saying, would you say that's a valid 5?
Oh, I think it's a valid 5. One of the more forgettable, easy to make fun of guys, and the fact that you're, re-signing a guy like that just because he's like semi big but not very skilled. Like, yeah, it was a bad contract and worthy of a top 5 pick.
Yeah, I could have probably put him even higher, to be honest. But I was
There's another defenseman who got a contract who deserves a much higher pick than that one, in my opinion.
Okay, all right. I'll start out with my 4 with this. To me, I'm gonna go. Man, this is tough because I'm debating on having this sort of. I'm probably gonna go with it. Actually, I was thinking Mike Hoffman for a second, but he was actually like okay for the Blues in that 2021 year. We only had him for a year. So it's hard to really say that, hey, this was a huge mistake to get him. So I would say it's this Nick Leddy thing and with number 4, because not only did you trade for him for the year in that 2022 when, the team was kind of injured on the defense. So you needed a guy like Leddy to come in. But it was also like that Detroit at the time got a significant haul from Nick Leddy. Jake Wallman, who actually turned out to be a pretty good player in Detroit and beyond that. And you also got rid of Sundqvist. That didn't matter as much. And you got a second for Detroit. All for this Nick Leddy guy who, helpful in the moment, I think, when you initially had him, but ultimately a terrible deal when you look at it in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Were you thinking that?
Yeah. I was probably going to put the Leddy contract higher than that, but I can't disagree that it's a top 5 pick. I probably would have put Leddy at 3.
Okay.
But I've been trying to work out my number 4 for a while because I do think the Leddy one deserves a top 3 pick. But I think just due to how bad that season was going and how important of a player he was to the franchise, I think Tarasenko getting traded up and to that moment, it was just such a sad, prolonged departure that it just made it such a horrible situation. Not to say the move was wrong, so I guess it's not really on topic, but having to trade Tarasenko after years and years and years as a Blue, and it didn't seem like he was, that much worse. It just seemed like the Blues had just fallen off a cliff in terms of performance, so people have to get moved. It was just sad to see. I don't think it was like the worst move that he's ever made. I just think allowing things to get to that point to have to move him was the worst part of it.
Sure. I could get behind that, but yeah, I see what you're saying. Definitely not like the definition of a mistake that he made there, because Tarasenko wanted out It's not like that we traded him and he was totally caught off guard by it. He'd been wanting to go out for quite some time, and we kept him for as long as we did, and then he walks. Ultimately, for me, I think that one just was bound to happen no matter what. So hard to really
Actually,
prevent something like that. Okay,
I might have to switch
changing.
it just because of the problems with it just doesn't fit the category. But I'm gonna put in Vince Dunn up there. I couldn't have been more upset just given how well Vince Dunn played that following year and keeping Krug, Falk, and was it Letty at that time?
I think
Parayko, Falk, and Krug at that time, where we knew, Krug's not going to be that guy. Falk, I think, had a good year that previous year, but even back then, I don't really think anyone was like, yeah, let's let Vince Dunn walk, and we have our D-men. We're good now. I don't think anyone was really thinking that at that point. People believed in Parayko. I don't know if everyone was on board with Krug and Falk. And letting a 24-year-old defenseman who's shown great promise in the offensive side, and he was still extremely young, I was very bummed out about that one. I think that was a really regrettable decision looking back on it, given who is still on the team. And Parayko was attempted to be dissuaded from staying on the team this last 6 months. So it's not as if people didn't try to get him off the team. Literally, those three could easily not be here if Parayko just did waive his no trade clause. And Krug is LTIR, not that he would be on the team. And then Falk is gone too. And you probably could have traded him a couple years before that as well. So that was a bad one, in my opinion. Maybe warranting a top 5 pick.
Okay. That's fair. Yeah. I could get behind that. And as I'm looking at the rest of the list here, I think that could end up being my number 3 as well. The only other one that I'm just thinking off the top of my head here that's not on our list, but I think just considering what he's done for the organization, I was leaning, by the way, toward this Bolduc Mailloux trade, but just wanted to see again. I wanted to make sure that I was right about this. Everybody was so high on Bolduc when he was a Blue, obviously, at the end of his career. And then they were criticizing the trade, especially in the early parts of this Montreal year. He was on fire for the Canadiens. And then it's like, man, haven't heard much news on Bolduc. Right, because he had 12 goals this year. And he not only had 12 goals, by the way, had 30 points total and a -6. And when he was on the Blues, he was a +20 that season, that previous year before he got traded. So, I was leaning toward that, but I'm like, it's really hard to judge that, number one, because it's a year out. And plus, he really wasn't that good this year. Was he better than Mailloux when you look at it critically? Probably. But it's hard to judge in a matter of a year. So I'm not going to put it. But I said it in the last episode when we're talking about grading the whole rebuild thing, and I'll say it again, Nick, and I'll throw one in as the 11 that I didn't say earlier. Ivan Barbashev trade, man. Yeah. And maybe you could shuffle the Nick Leddy thing and that one as maybe 4-3, but I'm going to do it anyway just because I just thought of it. This Barbashev trade has just gotten worse and worse over the years, and particularly though, for Ivan Barbashev's sake, he wasn't playing with the kind of guys on the Blues that he's playing with on Vegas, but he's proven himself to be that kind of top 6 player over the last years. I mean, you look at what he did last year, one of his best seasons ever, actually. I think his best season. 61 points this year, 23 goals with a +20, and had a couple power play goals, but, averaged about 16 minutes of ice time every game. 61 points this year, 51 points the last, 45 the year before, and then he got traded that in the 22-23. So he's just been great. And then you look at one of the years he had for the Blues, 60 points one year with 26 goals that year that we made the playoffs in 22. Just you traded away a guy like that. You knew that you probably had to, considering the rebuild, but maybe you could have stuck with him. And ultimately you didn't. And he's just killing it in Vegas. So that's my number 3.
No, that's a very good one. I mean, I remember that year when he got traded, he was just not playing well. We've talked about it on the other podcasts, but that was kind of the reason, I guess, for the justification. It still sucks to see him play so well all the time. But you got to admit to a certain extent, like Vegas is just so much better.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're going to be a player like Barbashev, who's not like top end talent, but is playing with some good talent, you're just going to be a better player as a result. And the Blues were just in no position to give him, I guess, that scenery. So, it was what it was. It sucks though. I'm with you. And for my 3, you already said it, but I loathed the Nick Leddy extension. I thought that was crazy. The first year it looked great, right? Quick rental and bolster the veteran presence on the defensive side. Fine. The extension I just thought was a complete move of desperation just because you just didn't know where else to go. And it all kind of filters back to the number 1 worst move that you made. But Leddy was a very, very bad contract extension. And, by the grace of God, somehow dropped him to waivers and someone claimed him. I don't understand how that happened.
Sharks.
But, he had, some good moments in that first, half of the year, but he was old. He just didn't have what he used to have. He's been in the league for a really long time. No offense to him, but just didn't warrant an extension. He was never going to be an answer for us long term, and certainly made us, I think, crippled our ability to get younger and start rebuilding or retooling, whatever you want to call it, faster.
Yeah, and he was slow. He was slow. He was 6 foot. He was small. And it's just sort of a liability out there at multiple points of every year that he was with the Blues.
Yeah.
Totally get behind that in the last decade, but certainly one for the Blues to forget. And you probably could have. We're not judging the trade itself. I think was what you're just saying is the extension that ultimately they got out of it. And I think remember,
trade was fine. It was the extension.
Yeah. And that was just pitiful. But him and Marco Scandella both, the two defensemen that Blues fans would like to forget as their 10 years.
I think we can both talk about the 2 and 1. I can take 2 if you just want to take 1, but I think we both know what these are.
You're saying Krug as the second, and then Pietrangelo as the first.
Torrey Krug extension after the worst decision made, absolutely, which you can talk about. Signing Torrey Krug, who is a small, playmaking defenseman expected to replace the other guy. There was no world where that was going to happen. I think there was a lot of people that wanted to remain optimistic. The Blues, for what it's worth, weren't the worst team for those next 2 years while Krug was on the team.
Yep.
He did contribute offensively. I don't think it was to the extent that people wanted him to contribute. I think people expected a little bit more. But I think you could admire Krug as a player. He's, chippy. He was a little feisty. You liked it. You saw it when he was on Boston for sure.
Yep.
But he just didn't fit. He did not fit with the Blues, their style. And they suffered extensively, especially after that playoff year in 21-22, where you don't even know what to do with him anymore. It just seemed like so many bad things would happen when he was on the ice. He just didn't do enough on that power play, and you had him for a long time. I mean, his contract literally ends this season. Mm-hmm. So he was signed 7 years, 6.5 annual value, $6.5 million annual value. And, I'm glad, he's probably doing better physically. And I know his ankle injury was really bad. He had those injury concerns prior, and we still made that decision. So certainly one of the worst decisions Armstrong's ever made. It's not number 1, but it is certainly close. And again, changed the trajectory where you, at one point you had Krug, Leddy, Falk. on that team, and
So bad.
you're expecting that team to be successful, which, God bless them. They made it to the second round of the playoffs. And that was because they were such a great, talented offensive team at that point still.
Well-rounded.
Yeah, and then if you lose that offensive capability, which they did very quickly, you are going to get exposed, and they did time and time again for those next couple years after. So, yeah, it is warranted and well deserved. Number 2 worst decision in the last decade.
And you know what? But I would like to preface this because I was smiling there as you were talking, and not because of what you were saying. But this Athletic article, like Torrey Krug, terrible injury, and you feel for the guy, derailed his whole NHL career. Of course, terrible. But the headline, Blues Torrey Krug is at peace. It's not the end. And I'm like, I'm glad he's at peace, of course. And I'm glad he's at least feeling better. But not to say that he was not going to play maybe for this team, after that injury, but I mean, the Blues are not looking back whatsoever to when Torrey Krug was playing for this team. He was only a liability out there for multiple points, and his defense was never there. And I think the Blues thought that maybe adding like a Scandella or something and adding these other guys after Pietrangelo left could fill that void left from Pietrangelo. It never did. And Torrey Krug was never going to be the answer. You thought that maybe he was going to be the guy that fills the void on the power play right there, because he was known to be that awesome distributor quarterback in Boston as on the power play, but ultimately it never happened. And there were points where he looked really good. And where that Blues power play was really good. Remember 2022, part of the reasons why the Blues were so good was because their special teams were great, and specifically the power play. So, and Jim Montgomery was running that power play. So I think they were at 25%.
If you look at his stats too, the first 2 years, you're like, oh, you know what? This could work out. He's got 32 points. And then next year, when everyone played well, they had 9 goals, 34 assists. You're like, hey, plus 23. You're like, hey, I think Krug could work out. And then you get the next 2 years. And of course, the Blues sold at the deadline. But, even before that, the Krug was a minus 26 in 22-23 and missed 18 games. And he was a minus 31 in 77 games in 23-24. Like, you just can't win with a defenseman who has a minus 31. And not all of it's his fault, but at the same time, like, I can't imagine how bad or weak and, leaky it was back there for 2 straight seasons.
Oh, I mean, just think about it. Maybe I just have like selective memory from that, because like I barely even remember that. Maybe it's good that I don't. But 18, so he in 21-22, Nick, he missed 18 games and he still had 43 points. So he was playing really well that year.
That was just we need to watch that season back.
Yeah.
Like, we really do. Everyone on that team just went crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out why. I don't get it. Like, it was literally the same team that they brought on the ice the next year.
Yeah, it was.
So, God, what happened? I don't know.
Yeah. And then the next year too, he missed 19 games and then, had that minus 26, which that was the start of it all. And then 77 games, minus 31. That's just atrocious. Yeah, ultimately, I think I remember we were with each other at dinner when Pietrangelo we signed Torrey Krug, and then Pietrangelo got signed by Vegas. I think the moves kind of happened pretty quickly with each other. And I just remember the moment. I was like, that's one of the first times since, a really long time as a fan where I'm like, oh no, like that probably doesn't seem like the right move at all. And I guess it's one of those moments where you say, trust the process, as Doug Armstrong, but ultimately did not trust it at the end of the day, and it did not work out. Process failed. And Pietrangelo shines for a couple of years as he did in Vegas, wins another cup. Now you're like that you don't have him signed to 8 years like you could have back then, because he will miss. He's probably done with his career with that injury that he got. So I guess not. Yeah, so is Krug, right? Similar. But I guess you're happy that you don't have to worry about the whole Pietrangelo thing now, knowing that you could have signed him to a big deal. But ultimately, I think people fail to forget this too, and maybe that we just weren't the communication was bad between ownership, management, and then Pietrangelo camp. It didn't seem like he really wanted to be here either. It's maybe he did, and maybe there was a lot of communication that we missed, but I think he turned down like 8.5, 9 million from the Blues. I want to say, I think it was 8.5 or 9. I think he ended up getting 9.5 with Vegas. So, not that much of a difference, especially if you really like to be in the city. So,
That's one of the problems. That's one of the problems with this one, and this one, and it hurts because the two moves flow directly into each other, obviously.
Yeah.
But you don't know what happened, and it doesn't seem like either of them are willing and able to talk about it. And this weird, ambiguous nature around the whole discussion and who was really at fault, it doesn't make any sense to me. It didn't ruin the franchise, but it set us back a lot because of that decision. You would think that the Blues would be a lot better. Alex Pietrangelo played in multiple Stanley Cups since then and won a Stanley Cup. He was one of the most valuable players on that team for 5 years after he left. Getting prime Pietrangelo for 5 more years would have helped the team immensely. Immensely. And then the Blues tried to replace Pietrangelo in signing Parayko in 22-23 or 21 for the start of 22-23. It's just not, it didn't work. Like, he wasn't that guy, and he's a good defenseman. He's just not Alex Pietrangelo.
Nope.
But imagine having Parayko and Alex Pietrangelo.
That's better.
Yeah. It's way better. And again, I know this is your point, but it was just, they were the worst sequential decisions I have seen from the Blues. And I don't even know if it's relatively close. Of course, we talked about those other 3. Those pale in comparison.
True.
To these 2.
Yeah. Not fun to look back on, especially knowing all the things that we could have had, especially knowing that you had a 2021 year where you technically made the playoffs, had another 2022 that you made the playoffs. Imagine what they could have done in 2022 with Alex Pietrangelo. Like, they somehow got 100 points that year over that. Imagine with him, could have been first place in the Central if all things worked out.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all. This is all what if scenarios, of course, but just fun to think about and debate. And also let us know if you guys have any other ones that either we missed or think we're too high, too low in the mistake rankings. Curious to hear all your thoughts. But another one wrapped up. Put a bow on it. Nick, see you for another one next week. Until then, have a great week, and we'll see you very soon.